With that being said, we've got corn down 2 cents right now, soybeans down 21 cents versus the Nove, and Dees wheat down 16 and a half. And in the studio, we have Cesar Cruz and Brian Basting, both from our research team. And today we're going to rehash the August USDA report here. Brian, first question for you. What was the big takeaway today from the corn and wheat standpoint domestically?
I think we have to look at the big picture to start out with, Drew, looking at the Black Sea, because the USDA did surprise the market a bit today, taking the Ukraine crop up 5 million tons from what it was in July. They upped the crop to 30 million tons. They also increased the exports, Drew, 3.5 million tons. Now that's a big wild card here as we visit on August 12th. But for today, the USDA is taking an optimistic stance that the resumption of corn exports will provide more competition to the U.S. this fall and moving into the winter. Now on the wheat side, Drew, Black Sea again, we have to look at Russia. The USDA bumped up Russia's production by 6.5 million tons from what it was in July. They also bumped up the Russian wheat exports, Drew, by 2 million tons compared to what it was in July. Now there was no change in the Ukraine production from what it was in July. So it looks like what the USDA is saying is that Russia will remain an aggressive wheat exporter in the coming year. And Ukraine, no change in wheat, but a big change potentially in corn. Looking briefly on the domestic side, Drew, this is just a mark on the wall in terms of yields, but the USDA did reduce yields of corn by 1.6 million, 1.6 bushels per acre, beg your pardon, from what it was in July. There's some debate out there, needless to say, about these initial estimates. Remind the viewers that the crop survey was taken the last week in July, first week in August. As your viewers know, a lot can change in corn yields throughout the month of August as we go into the grain fill stage. But I would say that the carry out a bit below expectations, Drew, just slightly under 1.4 billion bushels on U.S. corn carry out, mostly neutral there. But in terms of the world picture, Drew, the other item I'd mention is Europe. The USDA did reduce the European Union corn crop by 8 million tons this month from 68 to 60, and they did increase European Union corn imports by 3 million tons. So the big takeaways to me, Drew, would be in order: the Black Sea change with Ukraine corn going up 5 million tons, exports up 3.5. Europe corn production going the opposite direction, Drew, down 8 million tons, imports up 3. And of course, now we've got a mark on the wall for U.S. corn production. But they really didn't change much, only 100,000 acre reduction actually in the harvested corn acreage on that resurvey for Minnesota and the Dakotas.
Sure. Very good. Thank you very much, Brian. Cesar, turning it over to you. What was your takeaway on the soy complex for the balance sheet today?
Unlike corn, soybeans was a little bit higher. We got a little bit slight higher yields for soybeans here in the U.S. from 51.5 to 51.9 now. It gives us a little bit more production. We had a small cut also in acres from 88.3 to 88. What is going to happen in the future also depends on the production. The rest of the world, we know that Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, they had a very bad year last year with the drought, and now they're coming back to the market. We're expecting that we're going to have a good production combined for next year, Drew.
Very good, very good. Brian, what's your opinion on the crop size and the true conditions of corn and soybeans, to date, from your opinion, and anything threatening, compelling in the weather forecast that you see as well?
Variable seems to be the word of the day, Drew, as we look at the 2022 crops here in the U.S.
Right.
We did catch some good rains this week in parts of southern Minnesota, parts of northern Iowa, parts of Wisconsin, northern Illinois. Some areas of concern remain, though. Those areas include parts of Nebraska, parts of Kansas, northern Missouri. Some other areas in the eastern Corn Belt are a bit drier than we'd like to see, Drew. At this point, it's going to be up to the grain fill here on corn the last half of August. Are we going to get some good test weight on this corn, or are we going to start to tip back more and lose some of that potential? For beans, I think it's up in the air, Drew. It's a bit dry in some areas, a bit drier than we'd like to see for pod set and pod fill. My overall impression is that those numbers from the USDA will change from what they are today. That's not a profound statement, I understand, but I think that there's enough variability in the weather from the time even they took the survey 2 weeks ago, where those numbers could go either way. So from a risk management standpoint, I'd encourage viewers to be flexible, because those numbers are far from carved in stone.
Absolutely, absolutely. Cesar, you talked about the global picture for soybeans. Any other intel you can provide for us in terms of what's going on in Brazil, planted acreage for next year, and possibly what some of your contacts are saying?
Sure, Drew. Well, as I said before, we are coming from a bad crop season for South America because we had a lot of problems with weather. And for this year, I think we're going to have more acreage coming from Brazil, also from Argentina, and we can expect them to have higher exports. The USDA didn't change much from what we had from the July report, but they are coming strong for next year. And this is another reason for us to keep managing our risk, because we don't know what can happen. We still are talking, Brian and I were talking earlier today about the effect that La Nina still can have in South America. This is very uncertainty for us, what can happen there. But the reason here that we are now talking about them is because we have a good crop here in the US. We still have uncertainty about what can happen to soybeans. August is a decision month for us to see what's happening with the crop here. Illinois has a very good crop. Other parts in the western part of the US are not so good. Brazil, Argentina, and Paraguay are going to start planting later this year, and you have to keep our eyes open to what's going to happen in South America.
Very good, very good. Brian, you'd mentioned Ukraine a few times and Russia as well. Still a lot of headlines around Ukraine, especially with boats starting to move in and out of certain ports there. So any other tidbits that we should be mindful of as we move forward in the Black Sea specifically, or in that part of the world?
I'm going to digress for just a second, Drew, and follow up on a point that Cesar made with La Nina, because I think with wheat anyway, Argentina, Drew, is quite dry at the moment, and Argentina is a critical factor in the world wheat market. So I'd add in, we want to keep a close eye on that southern hemisphere weather the next 60 to 90 days here, because the USDA did lower Argentina by another 500,000 tons today. However, they did increase Australia by 3 million tons today. So the southern hemisphere wheat production will be important. Going back to your question, Drew, on the Black Sea, I think we have to take the USDA today at face value. And from that I mean that they are anticipating that Ukraine is not only going to grow a larger corn crop, but also going to export more than most people had ever anticipated 30, 40, 60 days ago. So I think that the story there is, will those boats, as you said a moment ago, be able to navigate out of those ports safely to their destinations, not only for corn, but also for wheat. That's a big unknown. But again, I think we have to take at face value what the USDA is saying today. But boy, if there's ever a fluid situation, Drew, it's 2022 in terms of what could happen from the Black Sea. But that's a headline to me today, the USDA's aggressive stance on Black Sea potential, as well as reducing that European Union corn crop is an important factor. And to follow up on Cesar's point a moment ago, Drew, South America will be critical because it certainly sounds like that those growers in South America will be motivated to plant quite a bit more. But as we wrap things up here, I think that the key thing on the Black Sea is, will those exports be realized?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you both very much for your time today. Great input here off the cuff, post USDA report. Again, the corn yield slated here for August, 175.4 for the 2022-2023 yield. The soybean yield coming in at 51.9, a little bit above that 51.1 bushel per acre estimate. So volatility is the key word. We continue to see a lot of evolving markets, especially as we finish up the weather in the northern hemisphere. And if there's any questions, feel free to reach out. And we thank you all for your time today.